Hello, Jeff Disher here. Thanks for visiting this new channel I'm putting together called Polyphile. Now this channel is going to be all about polyamory, which of course is a relationship philosophy relating to having multiple concurrent loves, to put it in a very literal sense. Now we could talk about more about what that actually means going forward. To begin with, this is just sort of a basic introduction talking about sort of the scope of what we're doing here and why. So first of all, why create this? Aren't there enough blogs and that focus on polyamorous ideas or concepts? Aren't there enough video logs that talk about relationships in general and periodically bring in polyamorous individuals to talk about the philosophy? And yeah, that's true. Part of the issue is that that usually gives only a very small kind of window into how things work, and it doesn't focus on some of what I think are key issues within the polyamorous culture itself. So what do I mean by that? What are the key issues? Well, for the longest time, we've had this problem of kind of allowing all interpretations and all definitions of all terms to be considered correct. Now, this was to make sure that no one came across as being elitist or kind of quickly trying to shut down someone's idea when maybe they actually were about to agree with each other or something like that. So this was done with the best intentions, but the problem is that over time, that's created this environment where our language has become kind of meaningless. It is very difficult to have a conversation with someone and have them actually understand you the way you intended to be interpreted. Because, well, maybe you both have completely different interpretations of the terms you're using. So you both walk away from the conversation thinking you were talking about something completely different. This is a problem because what was the point of communication if you can't be understood? So that means we're going to be talking about a lot of things like that. Now, this isn't to come across as, oh, there's only one way of doing this. No, it's usually to ask the questions of, what do these terms mean, and why do we think it's important that we interpret them in a particular way? What does that mean as people using it, or people living within that lifestyle? How do the conversations actually work? Because it seems very simple when you look at it from an outside view. When you've been inside the poly world, like myself, it's been my lifestyle philosophy since about 2003. Some ideas from earlier than that even. So it's something that after a while you kind of get tired of having the same kind of misinterpretations and confusions. So I want to get us down to having a precise language, not a correct or language we determine is the right way. But no, it's just let's try and actually either adopt a precise kind of understanding of language or at least become sensitive to the idea that we don't all mean the same thing all the time. So, well, what does this mean we're going to touch on? Well, I want to touch on a bunch of different ideas within polyamory, but within relationship philosophy in general. So, within polyamory, say, okay, well, what's the difference? What is polyamory? What's the difference between that and monogamy? What's the difference between those and open relationships or swinging arrangements? How do these things define or differ from kind of cheating or other forms of infidelity? What does infidelity even mean? What does commitment mean? What does relationship mean? These things, we throw these words around all the time, but I'm not sure that we have actually ever agreed on what they mean. So it's important that we kind of ask those questions, propose some potential answers to these questions, and see what kind of conversations we can have out of that. So this means that we'll be talking mainly about a lot of those ideas and terminology, really digging into, okay, what do these things mean? What is the difference between one and the other? But we'll also be touching on terms which often have more of a legal basis, but they're worth mentioning within this context just for a differentiating perspective, understanding what the difference is. Things like polygamy, how that's different from polyamory. How within the scope of polygamy you have things like polygyny and polyandry. What do those mean? What kind of historical context do we have to understand them, and how are they different from polygamy as a broad term, and how are they different from polyamory as a philosophical concept? So you can get many levels deep here before you have to start backing up and say, wait, we need to make sure we know what we're talking about, and that's why I want to focus on that within this channel. But similarly, it's not all going to be specific to polyamory. There's other ideas too that I want to talk about, which people use all the time in relationships, like I mentioned earlier, commitment, but other things like jealousy. What do a lot of these words mean? We use them all the time. Do we actually agree with each other about what they mean? So that's where I want to go with this, and I'm going to be bringing on some other people to talk with me about this, and we really want to dig deep into this and kind of, if we can't answer the questions, we at least want to point out that the questions are there. We want to frame them in the right way that people can actually have meaningful conversations about them. So Anyway, thanks for watching this. I hope you enjoy the channel. Leave a comment here if you want, and I'll address that, and maybe it can be something that gets discussed in an upcoming video, because there's a lot to talk about in this area, and I think we can have I think it's really interesting once we really start digging into the meat of this. What do we mean? And let's hope we can kind of learn to communicate better together and kind of see where that goes. Thanks.